Hello, this is Guy Finley, and welcome to the time we're going to spend together in a series of 3 talks about how to release the pain of your past. It's impossible to change the relationship we have with the world around us without changing the relationship we have within ourselves. In honesty, this is the secret teaching of the ages. Our task, that is, if we want to be free human beings, if we want a life in which we no longer carry around with us, what he did, what she didn't do, why it never worked out, all of those thoughts and feelings that are so painful. If we want to stop carrying them with us, it begins with discovering that there can be no real freedom for us until we understand the nature of the tyranny of the past that still lives within us. And one of the main areas of this unchallenged dictatorship that still holds us captive is our inability to forgive. Do you know people, maybe who aren't even alive anymore, that you haven't been able to forgive? We all do. Are there certain events in your life that you just can't release? You should know by now that what you can't release isn't the person or the condition that you see as being the source of your pain. What seems to be stuck isn't an old situation that you can't release. What's stuck and where we are stuck is in a thought. Over and over again, certain negative images crammed full of the conflict felt in the moment of their original creation are unconsciously revisited by a part of us that actually wants that dark visitation. Why would any part of us want that? Because this familiar pain confirms, in a very strong way I might add, a certain kind of certainty of who we are by recreating what once happened to us in life. Something in our own mind actively recollects what it does from our past, regardless of how it wrecks the present moment for us. To be punished by any past experience is to be a prisoner of our own past. There is freedom in realizing that whatever is holding us captive right now has no right to do so. None. In the split second that you see that you've been made a captive of your own mind, you have the freedom to challenge it because now you're starting to think toward your own negative states, your own sense of captivity, instead of thinking from that. Forgiveness comes with realizing that whenever you start thinking about someone or something from the past, including yourself, that you have literally been lured into the mindset, the presence of a certain past event that by drawing you back into it drags you into the world that you are trying to escape. Imagine this, by revisiting it. And in that moment, there can't be any forgiveness of anyone, let alone ourselves, because that sense of ourself that's living it out in that moment can't forgive anything any more than an image in a pond can make clear the waters in which it's being reflected. We're prisoners of the past because we don't recognize the echo of the past as being something that no longer exists, save for us listening to it tell us who we are. Seeing this as a fact, which it is, effectively ends not just the wrong relationship we have with our own mind in those moments, but it also ends the feeling that someone else is to blame for our pain. We cannot hope to let go of any pain without letting go of that level of self in which that pain lives on. If we want to have real forgiveness, if we want to be free of our past, then it begins with giving ourselves up each and every time some old past event, that old echo, sounds again and tries to press its will upon our own. Instead, let us use the will of this new understanding to lay down our old self when we see that that's what we need to do. If we'll do this, And I promise you that who gets up won't be the same you after you practice it. Something new will rise where you once were, and that new order of yourself will be free of the past. And that means that not only will you be free to forgive, but you won't be walking around anymore feeling like you're someone who needs to be forgiven for the things that you yourself did in the past. Hi, this is Guy, and thanks for joining me. We're going to talk, for now, about your right to be emotionally free. I mean, do you ever wonder why there are times where you feel so bad about yourself, or why events you experience are so disturbing? I think most of us do. And most of us also believe that we suffer in this way emotionally because the conditions that we meet within ourselves or in the world around us are actually punishing us. But the fact is, and this is where we have to dig in a little bit, the conditions in our lives do not have the power to punish us as we think they do. The true cause of our emotional pain is that we've forgotten that the higher intelligence that powers this entire universe is good. And I don't mean just sometimes, and not only for those who are, in quotes, deserving, but for all of us and in all ways. As we are now, when unwanted moments occur, a part of us reacts negatively, which brings us to a very specific point in this study. We can either identify with that dark stream of thoughts and negative emotions that come jumping up inside of us, believing that the only thing that's possible for us in that moment is to do as they say, to be what they tell us we have to be, or we can take that negative reaction as a signal to look up and out. Let me explain. By looking up and out in that moment allows us to shift our attention and to become quietly aware of the downtrending presence, that dark emotion within us that's trying to pull us into its world that is filled with yet more negative states. And because we're now aware of it, is the same as the beginning of being able to break free from it. Through self-observation, we can begin to realize that the real reason so much of what's going on within and around us seems bad is that that's all we can see. Just as beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so is negativity. So is emotional pain, which gives rise, as it does, to inner states like fear, depression, and bitterness, because once we start looking in that direction, that's pretty much all we can see, and that's all that we're given to see, which is why we have to change the direction that we put our attention in. In those moments, and all of us know it, we become bound up in thoughts and feelings that we don't want. And then, seeing a world that confirms our sense of captivity, we literally forget that none of what we're going through is necessary, because nothing we're looking at in that moment requires our attention. The only reason we ever stand in a storm of negative emotions is that we have fallen asleep. We've forgotten who we really are, including our inborn right to call upon a higher intelligence that instantly transports us out of harm's way by allowing us to realize the pain that we're feeling is because of the way we're perceiving the moment. So when we change our perception, so do we change the direction of that moment for us. And anytime we can remember to do so, we are free to wake up and return to our true home within us, which is far beyond the reach of those old fears, doubts, or any other emotionally troubling problem. If we wish to walk through life free of the fear of sudden storms, and to have that kind of special confidence we all want, of knowing that we have an interior home whose light cannot be breached by any darkness, then our task is clear. First, we have to see how we are indeed blinded and then bound in a prison of false perceptions induced by having forgotten our true higher possibilities. And secondly, we can use the following insight as a kind of wake-up call to action that it's intended to be, which will empower us to finally put behind us these negative emotional states that are so troubling. Here's the special lesson. The freedom that we have to let go and outgrow who we have been is not something created. It is and always will be ours, which means it can't be destroyed any more than the onset of night destroys the light of the sun. Nothing in the universe can take from you your right to be inwardly free of all unwanted emotions. That means that any time we find ourselves struggling to escape the grip of some negative emotional experience, it's only because we're in a dream. Actually, it's more like a nightmare from which we have yet to awaken. The true prescription, with the power to bring an end to these kind of emotional pains that constantly revisit us, is to shake ourselves awake from the forgetfulness that has caused us to lose sight of our true nature, not to mention its higher possibilities. Remember always the truth of yourself. It can't be stated enough, because remembering the truth of ourselves is one and the same as remembering our right to be free from all troubling emotional states. Hi, this is Guy Finley, and I'm so glad that we have this time together because we're going to look at something that all of us know we need to be able to do, but have really yet been able to find a way to do it. Today we're going to talk about how to kick dark moods out the door. Each day, most of us hear a kind of a knock on our psychological door, and when we open it, a pushy person enters and begins to bark out orders. We know how they go. Worry about this, it says. Remember or regret that. Or it says work harder or go faster. And the next thing you know, we're serving a set of thoughts and feelings that bring nothing but suffering with them. Is it little wonder we experience only the most fleeting feelings of love, of joy, kindness, or relaxation? We're all the time being pushed along by something that calls itself an authority, and pretty much without question we accept it as being one. A voice in our head comes in and orders us to get negative toward a person or a situation. And again, pretty much without question, we obey it, not even really aware of that voice, let alone what it's making us do or say. We think that we ourselves are responsible for that reaction and that there's a good reason for it. We've all been conditioned to accept these sad, self-destructive thoughts and feelings as actually being natural. At the same time, another part of us hates our darkened state, those thoughts and feelings that are dragging us down, and, strangely enough, believes that this hatred of these thoughts and feelings is natural. Can you see where we are? That's why we need a more informed view, one that reveals to us that neither the negative state nor the hatred of that negative state, of that dark mood that we don't want. Here's a more informed view of our present condition, one that reveals to us that neither the negative state nor the hatred of that dark mood is natural, and more importantly, this new view tells us that we don't have to put up with either one of those parts of ourself anymore. Why? Because a new and higher self-understanding makes it possible for us to regain command over our lives and to begin to be able to kick all of those dark moods right out the door. It's true that sometimes an unwanted visitor brings us a cake, if you will, a happy thought, and that from it we feel momentarily comfortable, content, or happy. But for every cake it brings, it whispers 10,000 painful suggestions. We can begin to recognize that all of these inner voices, these dark moods that are born out of them, are actually false authorities. And instead of inventing ways in which all of us has done to tolerate them, we can challenge their right to run our life altogether. It is not possible for there to be two authorities within us to rule the moment. When we challenge and reveal for ourselves what we can just call the false authority, we make an opening for the true one to take its rightful place in us. We can break the control of these inner voices, of the misery of those dark moods along with their false authority. How? Because when we begin to feel the approach of one of these dark moods, one of these negative thoughts and feelings that want to tell us who we are and what is our possibility in that moment, we can do what we've never done before, which is to challenge it by inwardly asking, upon what is your authority based? Asking that dark thought or feeling, that mood, on what is your authority based, is to bring ourselves into a place where we consciously question these intruders so that in the questioning of them, we separate ourselves from them. That momentary separation allows us to see something about that dark mood we could never see before. And by aligning ourselves with this new purpose, we begin to break free. Because by doing so, we're choosing the higher ground in our own consciousness. And from that vantage point, we can see the approach of any dark mood before it takes us over, let alone listening to its explanation of why it's right and we need to feel wrong. What a new way to look at life, if you can see it with me. Until now, no one has ever told us that our dark moods, our mental and emotional suffering, had no right to have authority over us. In fact, pretty much the opposite is what we were told, by example, let alone by word. However, with a redefined purpose, such as we're learning from these principles, we can see there is no value in a life that can be disrupted at any moment by the onset of some dark mood or negative state that wants to come in and tell us how we must feel in that moment. A true authority lives inside of each and every one of us that would no more submit to a false negative state than some creature would voluntarily jump off a cliff into a treacherous ravine. We can invoke that true authority by making it our purpose to realize its power in our lives. Every day provides us with another opportunity for us to reach this understanding that just because something is pervasive does not make it necessarily powerful. We can understand that the power of these dark moods over us is because we've never really understood where they're coming from, let alone that they don't have the authority that we've always granted them because we've never known we could do otherwise. Our new position shows us that none of that was real. None of it. No dark mood has any right to rule our day, let alone our relationships with it and others. But the only way to understand that is to challenge the authority of that dark mood and literally show it to the door. And we do it by inwardly understanding, saying to it, if you will, I don't want to live with you anymore. And the very act, the very thought of looking at these negative states from that perception is exactly how we kick all of those dark moods out the door. Again, learn to ask, on what is your authority based? And when you ask, you'll see the only authority it's ever had over you is that you agreed to be ruled by something that was secretly wrecking your life. Now, I know that these are not easy ideas, and I want to assure you that it's not going to change overnight, meaning that if you begin to challenge these thoughts and feelings, they're not just going to go away any more than the Pharaoh in the Old Testament said, sure, go ahead, leave Egypt. We have to work. But if we will work, this much I can guarantee. Every moment that you spend, that we spend working to see through these thoughts and feelings that produce these dark moods is the same as the power over them. And one day, no dark mood will have any authority over you because you have found out that the real power in life rests in understanding these moods, not in serving them. Thanks for joining me.